Hey, everybody. Welcome to Mondays with Mike. It is National Hurricane Preparedness Week. And as such, we are all about hurricane preparedness, hurricane safety, what you need to know to get ready for hurricane season. Today, by the way, if you're watching me live here at 12:30, Ellington Field from 12:30 until 4 o'clock this afternoon, you can go. It's open to the public. It's free. You could actually go see the Hurricane Hunter aircraft, the Air Force Reserve C-130, and then NOAA's P-3 Orion aircraft there, the ones that fly through, take all the measurements, and help to feed into the computer models and give us the best information we possibly can get to make the most accurate computer model forecasts, and just to know exactly, even right now, what's happening with the developing hurricane. By right now, I mean in real time. So let's get into it, talking about what we can do this week, what we could learn this week for Hurricane Preparedness Week to kind of start making some preparations, because I know this is the beginning of May, and hurricane season technically starts on June 1st. But, we've had 7 out of the last 8 seasons. Do you know that we've had a storm forming before June 1st? So it seems to be getting earlier and earlier. At least that's been the trend, over the last 10 years or so. So let's get into it. So I'm going to share the screen now and take you to our website at fox26houston.com. And here on our page, this is our weather page. So let me just get you oriented here. So the landing page is going to take you here to Fox 26 Houston, where you can get all of your latest news, information, and so forth. Now, if you click on weather, you will find a link, obviously, to our weather page, and that is going to bring you here. Wait, whoops, weather. I want weather. It's going to take you to our weather page, which, no, I don't need notifications. See what happens when I try to show you. So here we go. You can get your local radar and so forth. And here we do have some links here on the side of the page that are going to direct you to Hurricane Preparedness Week. And what you need to know for Hurricane Preparedness Week. Of course, you could always get all of the newest forecasts and so forth. You can learn about us and all of that good stuff. So if you click on the weather section, you can get things like tropical weather, which is what we're talking about today. So on the tropical weather page, which is also fox26houston.com/tropics, you can get access to satellite loops and also the GFS computer model, which we have running here. So a lot of good stuff. So let's start with what is on day 1, which technically was yesterday, of Hurricane Preparedness Week. And that is to know your risk of water and wind. Now, the rule of thumb is, and it's an oversimplification, okay, but the rule of thumb is that you run from water and hide from wind. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that in years past, before the modern era, let's say before the 1960s, when we had our first weather satellite launch, which was called Tyros-1, and it went into orbit in 1961. Before that, evacuations from the coastline were not very well planned. They were haphazard. They were very short notice, and a lot of people didn't leave. And so you had situations where you had mass casualties, mostly due to coastal flooding from storm surge. And so there are a few terrible examples, one of which is the 1900 Galveston hurricane, which was the deadliest natural disaster in American history. Estimates are between roughly 6,000 and 8,000 people died because they just had no idea how bad the storm surge was going to be. And since then, there's a whole history. It's amazing how they came in and engineered and built the island back up, built the seawall and so forth. You also had storms like Hurricane Camille, which was in 1960s and 1969, but there were a lot of people that didn't evacuate the coastline in Mississippi, where it made landfall, in Biloxi. Lots of fatalities. And so the bottom line is you need to evacuate the coastline. So if you have moved here recently, and maybe you live in a community near Galveston Bay, there's a lot of new development there, like in Texas City and in places like Shore Acres, Bay Cliff, San Leon, even LaPorte, even parts of Baytown, and then of course the Bolivar Peninsula, Galveston Island, Surfside. A lot of these places are very, very, very prone to storm surge flooding. And so when you have a hurricane coming in, the level of the water, I mean, I equate it somewhat to a tsunami because I think people can visualize that. The sea level actually gets pushed upward, it rises. In the case of Hurricane Ike, we had a storm surge that pushed the water up about 15 feet above its normal high tide level. And so you definitely did not want to be in that environment. Hey, Ish, the microphone's over here, sir. Say hi to everybody, sir.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody.
That's the man right there. All right. So that's why it's so important to evacuate the coastline. So that's running from water. What about hiding from wind? Well, if you were here in 2005 during the Hurricane Rita panic, and I was panicked about it too. This was in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, and it was 4 weeks after Hurricane Katrina, and we had a 175-mile-per-hour Cat 5 hurricane that was pointed directly at Houston. Well, everybody evacuated. And I mean, people in Katy evacuated, people in Cypress evacuated, people in the Woodlands evacuated, and everybody evacuated. And I could understand completely why. But it goes against the sort of conventional wisdom of knowing your risk from water and wind. And in terms of water, do you live in an evacuation zone? You could find a link to that on fox26houston.com/tropics. If you live inland, away from the coastline, and you're in a well-built structure, then you probably do not have to evacuate. I will say that there are times when you may want to evacuate, and you have to do whatever's right for your family. One of those times would be if you have maybe somebody with special needs in the household, and you feel that they would be safer, or if you have special needs and you feel like you would be safer in a place where you have more reliable electricity, let's say, then that may be one of those situations where you'd want to find a safe place, maybe out of town or out of the path, or stay with somebody else who has a generator. You know what I mean? That type of situation you may want to leave. If you live in a mobile home or a manufactured home, that is another circumstance where you may want to leave. And so, but really, if you live in an inland location like Sugar Land or Katy or Richmond or the Woodlands or something like that, and if you live in a normal, well-built home, then you're probably fine to stay put where you are. That being said, it ties in with a lot of the other things that are included in the preparations. And so let's move on here to day 2, which is to prepare. And this kind of ties into what I was saying, about staying put, and that is to prepare for hurricane season, which sounds like a Department of Redundancy department because this is Hurricane Preparedness Week, right? So what are we talking about here? Well, figuring out if you have to evacuate, where you're going to go. Are you going to stay in a hotel? Are you going to stay with friends? Are you going to drive to Dallas? I mean, what are you going to do? It's way easier to come up with that plan ahead of time than it is to wait till the storm. If you are going to ride out the storm, which most people will, you have to make sure that you have a disaster supply kit. And that includes having things, obviously non-perishable foods, a supply of water, which people have different opinions on. I'm of the opinion that if you save bottles of water, like let's say you save gallons or you save 2-liter bottles of Coke or whatever, you can keep those and you can wash them and you can put water in them before the storm hits, and the water will be perfectly fine for a day, 2 days, 3 days after the storm hits. You don't want to fill them up ahead of time and then put them in the closet for 3 months. That would not be ideal. But what I'm trying to say is a lot of people run to the store and just like fight mobs, to get bottled water, which, yes, that's very convenient. And I'm not against that. But I'm saying if you're hard up for cash and you just don't, have a chance to run to the store and fight the crowds for water, you can store water safely. You don't have to add bleach to it. It's fine for a couple of days. So, and I've talked to a lot of people about that. Now, I will say that I have a lot of respect for people who disagree. I know my colleague John Dawson disagrees with that. He doesn't like the idea of storing water ahead of time or storing water in, I don't want to misquote him. He doesn't like the idea of storing water in, washed out milk bottles, things like that. And I could get his point of view. There are specific tools, hurricane preparedness, like bags and things that you can, there's even a thing you put in the tub that you could fill up with like 50 gallons of water, and it's protected in plastic. So anyway, do some research online, Google it, see what works for you, what you can afford, what makes sense. Batteries, a way to charge your phone. I mean, in today's world, having a way to charge your phone is one of the most important things. Most people will end up using their cars to charge up their phone, which is okay. You just never want to have it in the garage with the garage door closed, obviously. Having a plan to communicate. If your phone goes out, how are you going to let people know that you're okay? Sometimes checking in on Facebook or something like that is the way people do it these days. And then strengthening your home. Whether you live in a home or an apartment, there are some things you could do. Some of them are very expensive, to protect your windows, quite frankly. Some of them are a little bit less expensive. Don't put the old X of masking tape on the windows. People will argue with me till the end of time that does anything. And I'm telling you, it does not do anything. If the wind is strong enough, or if a tree branch gets blown against your window at 80 miles an hour, the masking tape X is not going to do anything. So yeah. All right. So that's prepare for before the hurricane season. All right. The next day, which is going to be Tuesday's subject, is to understand forecast information. Let me just start with the absolute number one thing that everybody has to understand. And it absolutely drove me bananas last year with Hurricane Ian, which of course hit Florida. It didn't affect Texas, but it has happened here in some ways, although Florida has this phenomenon happen more than anything else. And that has to do with the cone of uncertainty. One of my mentors, Brian Norcross, who's with Fox Weather now as the hurricane specialist, he says the cone is king, right? Everybody, I'm sure you, me, everybody, we want to see the cone. We want to see when the Hurricane Center forecast comes out, where's the cone? Where's it pointed? Are we in the cone? Are we out of the cone? But the reality is that the cone is really just an estimate based on historical errors. So when you take the average of, how accurate is the forecast for 24 hours, for 48 hours, for 72 hours, and now the cone goes out 5 days. So what is the approximate error there? And then you take the center path, which is the most likely forecast, and then you go a certain number of miles to the left and to the right of that path. Now, about 1/3 of the time, the storm ends up outside of that cone. A lot of people don't know that. So even if you are outside of the cone, there is still a chance that you're going to get impacted by the hurricane. So that's number one. Number two is that hurricanes are very large storms, as you probably know. They can have very wide-ranging impacts. And the vast majority of the time, not always, but just something always to keep in mind is that when the center of the storm, when the eye of the storm hits Louisiana or eastward, so if it hits Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, typically the effect on Houston is minimal. Not always, but most of the time, the effect is minimal. If a storm hits to our south, if the storm hits Corpus Christi, or maybe down around Palacios, Matagorda Bay, then we have a tremendous impact. And that's what happened with Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey hit Rockport, Texas, which is down just near, let's just say in the vicinity of Corpus Christi, just north of Corpus. We had one of the worst situations ever around here. So where these things hits makes a big difference, and where the center hits does not make a big difference necessarily. It does make a difference with wind, but as far as rainfall and the duration of the winds and the duration of the rainfall and the tornadoes and so forth can happen far outside of the cone. So yes, the cone is king. And yes, we will follow the cone, but all of us here at Fox 26 will try to do everything in our power to always try to convey to our viewers, to you, that the cone is just one tool, but it does not tell the whole story. And so every storm is unique. You have big storms, small storms, they're unique on where they hit. So when we're talking about understanding forecast information, that is the number one thing I want you to know, is that hurricanes are large, and that even if you're not in the cone, you could still really be at risk. Okay, so the next is get moving when a storm threatens. All right, and get moving can mean evacuating, but it also means a lot of other things, like helping your neighbors, especially the elderly. You know, taking cash out of the ATM. There's a lot of things that people wouldn't think about, because if the power goes out, and if the power's out for a long time, sometimes you cannot get you can't buy things with your debit card or with Apple Pay or whatever. You just, the things that you're used to doing, you might not be able to do. Cash really comes in handy in those situations. You need to figure out what you're going to do with your pets, because if you're evacuating, the place that you plan to evacuate to might not accept dogs. Maybe you have large dogs, they might not take it. So you have to keep that in mind when you get moving. A lot of times you need to go around your home and pick up loose objects that are going to become flying projectiles. Tying down trampolines is one thing that's really good to do. But, you know, if you live in an apartment, you know, and a lot of people on your balcony, you've got potted plants out there and things, you have to pull that stuff in, because that might get blown right into your window, you know, your sliding glass window. And now you've got, once you get the wind in your home, once you get the rain blowing in your home, then there you go. I mean, that's major damage to all of your possessions. So make sure that you have everything sort of ready to go on pretty short notice, because you might not have that much notice. I mean, most of the time we have 3 days notice, 4 days notice that we're under a threat, but not always. Sometimes it could be only 24 hours. So that is the get moving. All right, staying protected during storms. Find a safe place in your home. Do you know that there are very, very often tornadoes with hurricanes and tropical storms? And so it may be that it's not that windy out, because maybe the eye of the hurricane is hitting down by Corpus Christi. We've had devastating tornadoes. If you want to Google Hurricane Beulah, that was a storm in the late 1960s that sparked like more than 100 tornadoes in Texas. And even though it hit well to the south of our area, also Hurricane Carla, which hit Port Lavaca, Texas, which is pretty far to our south, caused devastating tornadoes to hit Galveston. Deadly tornadoes hit Galveston Island. So you want to find a safe room in your home, in your apartment, that's away from windows, typically in the center of your home. Sometimes it's a closet, sometimes it's a bathroom. Do the best you can. You know, you make do with what you can. But in these days, you know, a lot of people want to stand outside and get video. And I understand that, because it goes viral and everything. And I get that, but it's just not a safe place to be. So you'll want to find a safe room in your house. If your phone is charged, then you can use that as a way to get your weather alerts. You know, you have tools like the Fox 26 weather app that you can download at the App Store. I know, shameless promotion, but that's one way that you can get your weather alerts. And if you don't want to do that, you could have a NOAA weather radio that you can get at a lot of big box stores, and it's not that expensive. Maybe it's $12 or so. I don't think it's that expensive. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. So that's that. And again, they're just repeating here to make sure that you understand that storms can hit far away. Now, this next topic is so important. It is one of the most overlooked aspects of hurricanes and severe weather, and that is what happens after the storm. After the storm. There was a study that was done, and this is a little bit old now, but because I did a story on it many, many years ago, but it looked at Florida's hurricane season in 2004 and 2005. And that was a very, very busy time in Florida. I think they got hit by 8 hurricanes, maybe 9. But it was 2 very, very busy seasons. And what the study looked at all the people who were killed by those hurricanes or during those hurricanes. And what the study found was that approximately half of the people were killed either before the hurricane hit, meaning in the preparation leading up to the hurricane, and then after the hurricane hit, during the cleanup, during the power outages and so forth. And I'll tell you that in the case of the Houston area, I could think of a few examples for you that some things you would never think about. Electrocutions. People die from electricity when the electricity comes back on. It happened during Tropical Storm Allison, and it happened during Hurricane Harvey. And it is one of those freak accident sort of things, though, that can be avoided. It's just something to be aware of, that you wouldn't think, you know, it would be a hurricane threat, but it definitely is. The middle thing that it says here, you'll read, clean up safely, don't push yourself. We hear about this happening up north after a big snowstorm. Sometimes somebody will be out there shoveling their driveway and they have a heart attack. That happens after hurricanes too. It happened in that study in Florida that I told you about. People are out there picking up tree branches. They're out there with chainsaws and stuff. They have a heart attack. You're up on your roof trying to patch the roof because you're a do-it-yourselfer, fall off the roof. You know what I mean? Serious injury. People get serious chainsaw injuries. People get lacerations from aluminum, corrugated aluminum carport. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a lot of hazards that happen out there after the storm, even if it's completely sunny out. There are a lot of very serious hazards. So use extreme caution when you go out there. And then, of course, in the case of Texas, you know how Texas is, there are always animals as well. We have alligators and snakes and fire ants and all of that stuff that happen after the storm. So take action today. Go ahead and take steps to determine your flood risk. You could find access to that. I'll show you here on our Fox 26 tropical page. Familiarize yourself with how to get your hurricane forecasts and where you're going to turn for your hurricane forecasts and so forth. And so if you go to our tropical page here, down at the bottom, I just want to show you these links where it says hurricane prep. Okay, so right here, we have a hurricane quick list. If you click on this, this is exactly what it sounds like. It is a quick list. It is ways to take action, to protect your documents, to prepare for your pets, what to do after the storm. This is like a one-page thing that you can print out. We also have a hurricane preparedness shopping list that's available for you because it's really hard to figure out, you know, to remember what to get. And of course, you don't have to buy all these things. Money doesn't grow on trees, but this is a good idea of at least a starting point, a launching point for what to get. Also, hurricane evacuation routes by what area you live in, by what zip code you live in. Like I said, maybe some of you are new and have moved to the area and you don't really get what is this hurricane evacuation all about. This map has these triangles that show you the direction. So like Highway 6 is an evacuation from Galveston, I-45, 146. All of these roads are evacuation routes. And then finally, the last one we have here for you, and this isn't everything we have, but this is the last that I'm going to show you here, is the evacuation by zip code. When Hurricane Rita hit, and in many storms before that, evacuations were announced like basically, okay, time to evacuate, let's evacuate Galveston, let's evacuate, Brazoria County. And so you had everybody just, it was a logjam on the freeways. What they do now is you have different zones, and you'll see the zones here, color coded, and each one is broken down by zip codes. And so your local authorities will announce zip code by zip code evacuation. So that way it's orderly and, you can get everybody out there without getting hurt on the roadways, because, during the Rita evacuation, we had people, it was a mess because everybody was in complete traffic jam. So anyway, it's Hurricane Preparedness Week. Look, hurricane season begins in 1 month. We could always get something even earlier than that. And this is all good stuff to think about even during non-hurricane season, because we get terrible weather around here, dangerous weather all the time. So thank you very much for your kind attention here during Mondays with Mike. Shout out to my mom and my brother. And that's it. If you have any questions, of course, you could always contact me via Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. I try to check Instagram, although it's hard, but you can contact any of us here at Fox 26. It's easy. In fact, our link is right there on our page. So thanks so much for watching. Have a safe day.